Banished Market Avenue Northwest is a program about people, residences, factories and stores, liveries, warehouses, public transportation, theaters and entertainment, hotels and restaurants, saloons, gambling, and brothels, with lots of sounds and even more smells, all found on Market Northwest. Team Photo is the moniker that the Grand Rapids Public Museum and the Grand Rapids City Archives and Record Center use to refer to this ambitious group of volunteer photograph researchers. They are all members of the Grand Rapids Historical Society as well. Market Avenue Northwest had many names. Water Street became East Water Street, became Waterloo, became Market Street, became North Market. The southern remnants became Monroe Northwest, and then Market Northwest existed no more. The red line on this Grand Rapids public planning map highlights where Market Northwest used to be, from West Fulton north to where it runs into Monroe, now known as Monroe Center, and the honorary designation of Breonna Taylor Way. This map appeared in Albert Baxter's 1891 History of Grand Rapids. Toussaint Campaw acquired the south side of his brother Louis Campaw's holdings and platted this land into blocks, lots, and streets. The concentric circles indicate 1/4 mile distance from the center of town. We're starting our tour at the northwest corner of West Fulton and Market, and we'll proceed up the west side of the street, the side with the odd street address numbers. Let's go. The Barnard House and Barnard and Company livery were located at 1 to 3 Waterloo on the north side of Fulton, where Waterloo intersects. This is a Schuyler Baldwin photograph of Summit Street where it met Waterloo. The white 3-story building marked with the arrow is the Barnard House. This image is from the George Fitch collection. This image of the Barnard House is from the James Hooper collection at the Public Museum. You can see the livery building to the left. The Colombian Transfer Company's 3-story building is visible to the north on the right side of the photo. The Barnard may have started as a legitimate rooming house with a bar, but eventually it became the scourge of the neighborhood for drunkenness, fighting, prostitution, and more. The barkeep did not follow the law, and they lost their liquor license more than once, but that did not stop them from serving liquor. This photo of the Barnard House finds the building renamed the Imperial Hotel. It was renamed for a short time. The 3-story Colombian storage building is visible next door to the north. While they were raising the hotel building in July 1908, contractors had to shoo people out of the hotel who were still living in it. We're looking at the Sinclair Station on the northwest corner of Market and West Fulton. Our gracious local history colleague, Tom Carter, dated this photo for us. He said, "In the Sinclair photo, the newest car is a 1961, and there are 3 white 1962 license plates and 1 dark 1961 plate, meaning the photo was actually taken between October of 1961 and March of 1962, when both plates were valid. The billboard on the right shows a new 1962 Chevy 2, which would have been introduced in late '61, with the billboard still intact undoubtedly well into 1962. So I'm calling this photo 1962 as that's most likely." Behind the station, you can see the Grand Rapids Custom Shop, which was located on Campaw Avenue, which ran roughly parallel to Market and the river. You can see a Greyhound bus next door at the bus terminal. Elston Richards and Bink Mulder are also on the right. City Archives records indicate that the Sinclair Building was raised in spring 1983. This is an 1888 Sanborn fire insurance map. The pink building at 11 to 17 Market was built in 1884 by Noyes Latham Avery for S.S. Ball, whose business became Ball and Waters, and then in 1893 sold out to Colombian Transfer. Knowles Avery came to Grand Rapids in 1850 to seek out investment opportunities for Eastern businessmen. He engaged in the gypsum business, banking, and real estate, and owned a lot of downtown property. He served as a city alderman and was the Grand Rapids postmaster during the Civil War. He served as the volunteer coordinator of sanitary supply during the Civil War era as well. Researchers were delighted to find this 1897 story about the Colombian Transfer building. The Kent Athletic Club, an athletic and social club, rented the top floor of the Colombian Transfer. The club was often in the news for scheduled boxing matches and unscheduled carousing. The headline read, "Disgraced the town after the city-sanctioned carnival," and followed with, around 2 a.m., about 250 men gathered at the Kent Athletic Club to watch a pair of women, identified only as Miss Munch and Miss Williams, dance for their entertainment. More than a dozen were arrested during an ensuing police raid, which found the girls in attire more scant than a Narragansett bathing suit. The entertainers were arraigned on counts of lascivious behavior and participating in an immoral dance called the Coochie Coochie, while attired only in breechcloths. Attendees included a member of the city council and several other city officials. Police watched the show from the roof of number 19 and then went through the windows for the arrest. This building, like so many others on Market, suffered Grand River flooding almost every year. In 1901, they also had a fire. The barns for the transfer company caught on fire. The Kent Athletic Club on 3 and the Automatic Dustpan Company on 2 were a total loss. In 1903, Colombian Transfer offered a contract to sell their byproduct. Over 1,000 loads of manure expected to be produced during that year. Let us only imagine the smell. Here's an aerial photo from 1940. The Colombian Transfer building is outlined in red. A red line from Fulton on the left to Monroe on the very far right shows the path of Market at the time. In addition to the Colombian Transfer business, the building housed the Automatic Dustpan Company, plus an earlier attempt at salvation with the old Waterloo Mission, pre-Mel Trotter mission. This 1989 circa panoramic shot is where the Barnard House and Colombian Transfer once stood. This photo was taken at the construction site for the East Bank Waterfront Towers and was discovered in the city archives. Another image from the city archives shared this Plaza Tower history. Construction began in 1988 and it opened in 1991 as the East Bank Waterfront Tower and Radisson Hotel. The structure experienced significant problems and had to be closed and completely reskinned in 95 through 1997, just 5 years after opening. 250 residents and 160 building employees were displaced during renovation work. The building reopened as Plaza Tower with a Marriott courtyard on the lower floors. In 2001, Einhorn LLC bought the building from Amway. On April 20, 2013, the building was once again evacuated as the flooded Grand River filled the lower level mechanical space and flooded the basement parking garage with over 7 feet of river water. The evacuation lasted until the building reopened on May 8, 2013. This is a recent photo of the Plaza Towers building from Google Maps. Next door was 25 to 27 Market. This is a 1912 Sanborn map. We could find no photo of the Golden and Boder building when they were on Market Northwest, so we are showing the location with this map. Tom Golden, one of the principals in Golden and Boder, had been interviewed and recalled that Golden and Boder's farmer's feed barn at this location once sheltered 150 horses. Imagine the sounds, the smells, and the streets. You're looking at advertisements for some of the companies doing business at 25 to 27 Market. The A.L. Holcomb Saw Company has ads from 1895 and 1905. The company was located on one side of the building. The records indicated that in 1897 and 8, this building had an interesting combination of businesses. There was a feed barn, boarding of horses, sale of stock, and this was the site of the Metcalf's undertaking rooms. By 1907, Golden and Boder bought the property. And this is interesting because so many of the businesses did not own the land upon which their buildings stood. In late 26, Golden and Boder moved to Market Southwest, but the farmer's feed barn that they ran continued to be run by them at this old address. From 28 to 35, the Southern Michigan Transportation Company, a subsidiary of Michigan Electric Railway out of Jackson, Michigan, occupied the building as well. In 1935, the building was razed and it became a parking lot. The museum has this splendid photo from 1926 with a Golden and Boder team of horses working on the Ravenswood subdivision and golf course in East Grand Rapids. The Ravenswood information is on a sign on the small building in the distance, and Golden and Boder is printed on the side of the wagon. Golden and Boder still owned the land where the parking lot was on Market Northwest until they sold the property to the Greyhound Bus Company in 1946. Due to World War II, there was a scarcity of building materials, so the Greyhound wasn't sure how soon they could start building the terminal. The new modern structure was opened in 1949. The terminal also had taxi stands to serve the bus riding clientele upon reaching Grand Rapids. Here we have an ad promoting great opening day prizes at the new Greyhound terminal. We thank Craig Vanderlinde, a Grand Rapids professional photographer, who gave us permission to use this mid-1970s photo that appeared in the Mapes and Travis book, Pictorial History of Grand Rapids. The land the Grand Rapids bus terminal sat on was desired by the city and by developers for many years. In 1986, when Greyhound was undergoing massive infrastructure changes to its business, terminals were being sold off to local concerns. The city finally was able to buy the building and the land. They leased the terminal back to Greyhound until another site was found for a new terminal. Then, this Market Northwest terminal was razed. Moving on next door to 31 to 35 Market, we see the Arthur Wood Carriage Company. They were in business from 1866 to 1906, even though Wood passed away in 1893. Some of the goods they sold included family carriages, physician batons, fancy buggies, road wagons, carts, cutters, surreys, and buckboards. The property was purchased for $18,000 in 1905 by Henry Vinkmulder. The lot, 66 by 200, lay on the south side of the Grand Rapids and Indiana Railroad tracks from Market to Campaw. These low buildings shown here were gone by April 1908 when excavation began for Vinkmulder's new warehouse. It should be noted that the Arthur Wood Factory is written about in Albert Baxter's History of Grand Rapids and the Dwight Goss book, History of Grand Rapids and Its Industries. 31 to 35 Market was the address of the Mulder Produce Company and the Central Michigan Paper Company. Henry Vinkmulder started as a retail grocer, quickly moved into wholesaling, then into produce shipping. He was also a realtor and platted the East Grand Rapids San Luray neighborhood. His building was built from old cut stone, face brick, joists, and steel beams salvaged from the old North Division Federal Building, which Vinkmulder purchased and tore down in 1908. His produce business moved into the building in 1910, using the basement and the first and second floors. Vinkmulder was known as the Onion King. In 1929, he shipped 15 to 20 cars a day of onions during the season and had warehouses in Morley, Shelbyville, Martin, Grant, Friesland, and Petoskey, with storage space for 250 railroad cars of onions. In 1912, Central Michigan Paper leased the east half of the Vinkmulder building, which had 5 floors, a basement, and a railroad siding on the north. Vinkmulder stayed on the west or Campaw Street side of the building. Fun to note, 2 front doors on the Vinkmulder Central Michigan Paper Building, which previously had been in the old North Division Federal Building. Well, a few years after this building came down, those doors were incorporated into the Fulton Commerce Building at 38 West Fulton, housing Sanchez. We are now moving north across Ferry Street. Ferry is now an alley known as Ethel Co. Way. 39 to 55 Market was the New Era block, but was more often referred to as the William A. Berkey Furniture Company building. New Era was a name applied to lots of hopeful ventures after the economic panic of 1893. This photo shows a 4th-story addition in process. That dates this photo as being taken during April or May of 1894, when 12,500 square feet were added to be used as additional furniture sample showroom space. Nan Schichtel was delighted to discover and purchase this photo from eBay last fall. Finally, it was in this building that Charles Leonard first built his new type of refrigerator. He manufactured it here for 2 years before establishing his factory on Ottawa Avenue. H. Rademacher and Sons, located in the basement of 39 to 49 Waterloo, was established in 1878, employed 35 men, sent goods all over the U.S., and had $40,000 sales annually. The company was started by a Dutch immigrant who made and wholesaled baseball bats, croquet sets, Indian clubs, and all kinds of turned wood. The company went into receivership 3 years after the Panic of 1883, but recovered and became the largest manufacturer of baseball bats in the world by 1896. It was reported that the company produced 200,000 baseball bats in 1887 alone. They moved from their Waterloo address to one on College at Cottage Grove Southeast and continued manufacturing croquet sets into the 1960s. The photograph of the Rademacher bat was found on the Keyman Collectibles website. From 1865 to 1890, 59 to 63 Market was the home of the Excelsior Machine Shop, with James C. Simmons listed as proprietor. James and his brother Frank Simmons had founded a shingle mill machinery factory in 1856, providing millworks and shingle machinery across the country. The company name changed to J.C. Simmons and Son. The property, owned by the Blodgett Company, eventually housed printers before it was sold in 1909. In 1909, the John W. Blodgett Company sells property to Charles N. Remington for $50,000, and buildings on those sites were raised. Remington was active in the Association of Commerce, served on the influential Parks and Playground Committee, and on a city beautification committee. This Sanborn map from 1912 shows the expanded William A. Berkey Furniture New Era building, with the oldest part on the south at Ferry, the first two sections, the 4-story Toussaint building immediately north, and the 5-story Campaw building under construction while this Sanborn map was being printed to the north of that. The roof of the Campaw building would be constructed to easily add a roof garden, but it was never added. These buildings, like so many others on Market, suffered when the Grand River flooded, and businesses had to shut down. This is the only front image we can find of either of the Remington buildings in this block. This is the Campaw, located at 59 to 63. Unlike the Toussaint, its almost twin, this one had a white terracotta facade. The image was printed in a January 1913 Grand Rapids press. 65 to 67 Market is the address of the Kennedy Building, which also bore a Lewis Street address since it was on the corner. A number of businesses were located at this address, including, in 1883 to 1885, Drukey and Kennedy, liquor wholesalers. 85 to 1917, Alexander Kennedy, liquor wholesaler, until his retirement just before Prohibition, followed by Fred J. Broger's wallpaper, paint, and varnish wholesale and retail business. There were also small furniture manufacturers, a clothing manufacturer, and in 1919, Peter Dornbos, cigar manufacturer. It was the meeting place for the Knights of Pythias, the Holland Building and Loan Association, the Knights of the Golden Eagle, and a massage parlor. The building was vacant from 1932 to 1935. Then, from 1935 to 1941, Ed Hooksma, who had worked with Broger in the wallpaper, paint, and varnish business, moved in and started his own business. The building was raised for a parking lot in 1941. This photo shows the intersection at Market and Lewis with the William A. Berkey New Era building at the top middle, Remington's Toussaint and Campaw buildings, only 30 years old, have been reduced from 4 and 5 stories to 1 story tall, with parking on the top and in the basement. The Campaw still had a printing and a veneer business on the first floor. The Kennedy building is gone and replaced by a surface parking lot. In the foreground is the parking lot that replaced the Eagle Hotel. In 1949, Robert Hall clothing retailer went into the Toussaint building. Note the arrow sign that was on the Berkey building next door. Here you can see both the Toussaint and the campus sites reduced to one-story structures. These November 1973 photographs were taped together in the city archives. This panorama shows, on the left, the train signal at Ferry, now called Ethel-Co Way. In the center, we're looking west at the site of the William A. Berkey New Era Building and the Toussaint Building. On the right is the Campbell Building, which remains only for a short time and only with one story. The Remington Moore family owned the land that became this parking lot. This site is now occupied by a huge parking structure on Monroe Northwest. Okay, we're going to cross Lewis Street. Watch out for the road apples. The Eagle Hotel was built in 1834 on the northwest corner of Waterloo and Lewis, shown by the red dot. The hotel was begun by J.S. Potter and finished by Louis Campaw. It was the first actual hotel in Grand Rapids, and guests included land speculators, fortune hunters, salesmen, government agents who came to work out treaties with the Native Americans, and more. In the earliest years, people could debark at the special boat docks located just behind the Eagle Hotel. When you look at this 1836 plat map of the village of Grand Rapids, with many more streets than likely existed at the time, you see that the river used to flow much further east than it does today. The 1851 flood caused the Grand River to rise so high that a steamboat came into Waterloo Street in front of the old Eagle Hotel. In 1857, the Common Council passed a resolution to ask the county for permission to fill in the channels between the city and the islands numbers 1 and 2. This process took decades, but most sources agree that dirt and gravel from Prospect Hill to the north was used to fill in the channels. The Eagle was a temperance hotel as early as 1870, so it contained no bar, which was an oddity for anything on Waterloo at that time, where it seemed that every other building had a saloon. The hotel was advertised widely as a temperance or dry hotel after it was purchased by J.K. Johnston in 1876. Mr. Johnston was a teetotaling Baptist who vowed he would never allow a bar on his premises. The Eagle became known as a convention hotel for smaller organizations, especially those with anti-saloon and prohibition leanings. Without a bar or a billiard room, the Eagle charged $2 a day for a room and 3 meals. Visitors were welcome to the 35-cent Sunday dinner, while on weekdays, businessmen could eat lunch for 35 cents. The Eagle was enlarged several times. While named a hotel, the Eagle was also a boarding house. Arthur White, in his book Old Grand Rapids, tells of boarders who lined up at the entrance to the dining hall, and when the bells were sounded, rushed for the preferred seats. The wooden Eagle Hotel burned down fast in spring 1883 and was replaced that same year with a roomy brick building that extended to the Gilbert block on the north. Note, the railing on the Lewis Street side protected pedestrians from falling into the basement window wells, where windows allowed light into the lower level window rooms. On the right, you can see a stagecoach and horses called the Omnibus Line, awaiting passengers at the front entrance. An early electrical streetlight is suspended above the intersection, a little above the center right of the photo. After the fire, 90 rooms were furnished by Berkey and Gay. There was a restaurant and later an interurban waiting room. In 1907, interurban cars left the Eagle hourly on the Grand Rapids, Holland, and Chicago line. Also listed in different years were a barber shop, J.J. Thompson's, the installment jeweler store, the Chicago Candy Company, owned by Mr. Juris, and a fruit and candy shop run by Mr. Contos and Mr. Paravantes, the last three being of Greek descent. Did the Eagle stay dry after Johnson's death? We're guessing not, since saloon keepers, Parrish and Carruthers, from across the street, ran the hotel until Carruthers' death in 1922. The Eagle did not survive the Depression and closed. It was razed in 1933 and 1934 and was replaced by a parking lot. This photo is from the city archives. Here's the parking lot that replaced the Eagle Hotel. George Fitch collected photos, and this is one of his images. In 1925, Fitch published a heavily illustrated book, Old Grand Rapids. It was republished with some updates in 1986 by the Grand Rapids Historical Society. Located at 89 Market, the Gilbert block, not to be confused with the Gilbert Building, which we did for quite a while, was a 4-story building that stood between the Eagle Hotel and the Rathbun House. It changed names many times and housed a lot of businesses over the years, including the Hotel Cadillac, the Valley City Tailoring Company, and Miss Viola McStockard's boarding house. McStockard was charged with keeping a disorderly house and was convicted and sent to the Detroit House of Corrections in 1903. Another dubious business was the Hotel Tenkate, which was often in trouble with the liquor laws. And then there was the Interurban Hotel, a temporary hotel, which also housed the Amos Siegel Saloon, and later the City Hotel. In 1935, the building was sold to Kresge's for construction of their new Art Deco store. We've made it to the corner. The Rathbun House was located where Market met Monroe. As you can see, it's a rather large building. The original structure was only 20 by 30 feet and a story and a half high, and that was the home of Lewis Campaw in 1834. This photo is one side of a stereoscope card and was taken long after the Campaws had moved. You can see an older section made of wood facing Monroe, with a large addition on the Market Street side built of limestone. In 1838, the Misses Bayless were running a boarding house in the wooden structure on Monroe at this address. In 1841, it became a hotel, the Mansion House, run by James Finney. Charles Rathbun, a cousin of Rix Robinson, purchased the property in 1844 for the huge sum of $3,500 and renamed it the Rathbun House. In 1846, Rathbun spent another $3,500 to add the 4-story addition made of cut river limestone. He added 60 rooms, a kitchen, and a ballroom. The huge ballroom took up the entire upper floor and was used for lectures, concerts, and as a theater hall for traveling theatrical companies. The Rathbun House was in a location where visitors could see a panorama of Grand Rapids activity. Here is an 1857 photo from the George Fitch collection that appeared in the Mapes and Travis book, Pictorial History of Grand Rapids. The arrow shows the position of the hotel on Monroe and Market, in a photo that is familiar to local history lovers. From 1872 to 1875, the hotel was run by A. Antisdell, and the hotel was raised in 1885. This is another photo from the Fitch collection. We would be remiss if we did not mention at least one business which ran out of the hotel. Lung Sam, a Chinese immigrant, operated his OK Laundry under the Rathbun House until 1880, when Fee Fu King is listed as the operator. After 1880, young Joe became the owner of the Rathbun House Laundry. We recommend that you read Historical Society trustee Matthew Ellis's recently published book, Hidden History of Grand Rapids, that has an interesting chapter detailing Chinese immigration in Grand Rapids during the era of the Chinese Exclusion Act. A 1912 Grand Rapids Herald article described the Rathbun in its heyday, and I quote, "One local resident clearly regretted the raising of the Rathbun. The young bloods used to meet there when I was on the turf, as do the young fellows at the Morton House today. You would see 20 or 30 of the young men of the town there every evening, and they had more vigorous ideas about coloring the town. It was a common thing, especially during the war, that's the Civil War, for the bar and billiard room in the Rathbun House to take in $100 a day." Another patron noted, "You could make all the noise you wanted, get drunk, and raise the wildest kind of racket without any fear of interference. There were no blue-coated fellows to stop ya." The Widdicomb Building replaced the Rathbun House with addresses on both Market and Monroe. It was built by William Whitticomb in 1885-86 and included 6 stories plus a basement. Originally, the first 2 floors above the ground floor were built for De Molay Commandery, Knights Templar. Later, that space became business offices. In 1886, when the building opened, Houseman and Jones Clothing moved into the ground floor. This letter is from November 1896. "Having signed a 4-year renewal of your lease and accepting your request that the store be remodeled to give you the entire 200 feet front in plate glass, I would say the character of the work is such that I must have full control of the premises for at least 60 days after January 4, 1897. I realize that this will be a serious disturbance of your business, but the magnitude of the ironwork required and the fitting of a new steel ceiling with the bringing into your store the space formerly occupied by the Peninsular Trust Company cannot be accomplished unless you are prepared to give me the entire premises for the time above mentioned. Awaiting your reply, I am William Whitticomb." Houseman and Jones did business under many names throughout the years. And it was Houseman and Jones at this time, but at another time it was called the Mammoth Clothing House. After the Whitticomb remodeling, Houseman and Jones promoted their reopening. The clothing company heavily promoted the light coming in through those new plate glass windows and also illuminated with 1,000 incandescent lights. It will be a great sight. Houseman and Jones at their Daylight store had a long run in the Widdicomb Building, but when William Whitticomb wanted to double their annual lease from 9,000 to 18,000, they moved to their own building on Monroe in 1912. The postcard on the right is the Market Street view of Houseman and Jones and is from the Tom Dilley collection at the Grand Rapids Public Library. S.S. Kresge Company 5 and 10 cent store moved right into that ground level space vacated by Houseman and Jones, having purchased the rights to the remaining 4 years on the Houseman lease. The upper levels of the building were offices leased by real estate agents, banks, insurance, medical, and other professionals. We have a fun story about one of them. A patient of Dr. Isadora Powers is responsible for the statement that the lady is not only skilled in the use of the instruments required in the practice of her profession, but in handling firearms as well. From her husband, George Powers, a detective who was killed in the line of action in 1895, she learned to shoot to kill. A thief raided the offices of dentists, doctors, and other occupants of the Widdicomb Building during the noon hour, when no one was expected to be present in any of the rooms. The thief entered Dr. Power's office while she was alone and gazed longingly at a drawer in a desk wherein he presumed the doctor kept her cash. Without the least embarrassment, the purpose of the thief was divined, and when the doctor presented a revolver with the assurance, "I can shoot all the buttons off your vest," the thief decided that it would not be well to permit the doctor to demonstrate the truth of her statement, and quickly obeyed her command, "Put 100 feet between my door and yourself instantly." Dr. Powers had offices in the Widdicomb Building from 1913 to 1917. Here's a lovely night view postcard showing the Widdicomb Building on the left. In 1920, S.S. Kresge Company bought the Whitticomb Building from William Whitticomb for $500,000. The 1925 City Directory lists the businesses in the building, including 21 doctors, 19 real estate firms, 16 dentists, 10 insurance agents, 7 lawyers, 3 personal offices, 2 chiropractors, 2 retail stores, including Kresge's and a shoe store in the basement, 1 barber, 1 stockbroker, 1 architect, 1 paving company, 1 auto accessory manufacturer, 1 knitting company, and only 1 vacancy. The shoe company featured in the inset ad was located in the basement of the building. In late '35, occupants were notified the Whitticomb Building would come down, floor by floor. Initially, Kresge's thought that they might just remove the top 4 floors, but when they were able to buy the Gilbert building to the south, they decided to take both buildings down to the ground for their new store. This photo is especially interesting as the first 2 floors of the Whitticomb Building are still intact. A wooden false front protected pedestrians while showing the future street-level look of Kresge's store. This image is from a series of 1936 photos in the Public Museum collection that show the Whitticomb Building demolition and construction of the new Art Deco style Kresge's store. This is store number 59, the new Art Deco style Kresge's store, and an ad for a triple dip banana split at that store. The buildings in the photos you have seen so far have vanished. This one has too, but some of you may remember this one. This 1939 Grand Rapids Public Library photo was restored and described by Tom Carter as Christmas shopping in downtown Grand Rapids was quite different from today. On this December 16, 1939 afternoon, as a 36 Plymouth attempts to turn right from Monroe onto Market Avenue in front of Kresge's, a friendly policeman is keeping things flowing smoothly. Note the guy with the wooden sandwich board over his shoulders promoting a business, just like in the funnies. The men wore suits and hats. The women wore dresses and suits with fur collars. We've traveled up the west side of Market Northwest to the head of Monroe, and now we're crossing the street, making that turn back to 1857. This photographic image is a colorized educational slide previously used by the Public Museum and is one of the earliest photographs taken on a glass negative of any local scene. The image was taken by Jim Keeney in 1857, entitled Looking Down Waterloo. You can still see the eagle on the Eagle Hotel sign, and the words below say Kalamazoo Stage Line. The Barnard House is the brown building in the center of the photo. Notice the wooden sidewalks and a few residences. The original photo is in the Fitch collection at the Public Library. We're stopping here for a banana split at Kresge's, but we hope you'll join us when we continue down the east side of Market Avenue in part 2.